All right, overnight, Florida Congressman and gubernatorial candidate Byron Donalds came face to face with angry constituents at a town hall where voters demanded answers about the cuts in the Trump administration led by Elon Musk. Came to a head when Donalds was asked about Social Security.
Do you approve of Elon and Doge invading our Social Security files?
Elon Musk and Doge have been authorized by the President of the United States. Now, this is my question for the audience. Do you want to yell or do you want to hear?
All right, with us now is former White House official under President George W. Bush, Ashley Davis, and Democratic strategist Julie Ruzynski. So you have that with Byron Donalds, which might not even be the worst headline or news that Republicans are facing this morning when they wake up. In the Wall Street Journal today, as we like to say, the Rupert Murdoch-owned Wall Street Journal, this headline: Dow headed for worst April since 1932, as investors send no confidence signal. When you jump in the article, it says the Trump rout. And that's their words. The Trump rout is taking on historic dimensions. The Dow Jones Industrial set almost 1,000 points on Monday, headed for its worst April since 1932. The S&P's performance since Inauguration Day is now the worst for any president up to this point in data going back to 1928. That's according to the Bespoke Investment Group. So, Julie, if you're in the White House and you see these headlines, worst April since the Great Depression, how does that put the wind beneath your wings?
If you're in the White House, you don't care. If you are a Senate Republican or a House Republican, you should care because you're up for election next year. And as you saw from Byron Donalds yesterday and you saw from Chuck Grassley's town hall and other town halls, voters are fed up. They're scared. They're panicking about their bottom line. This president was elected by his own account to lower the price of groceries, to, as he says, make America great again. This is not making America great again, and the people who are going to pay for it are the enablers in Washington who right now don't have the courage to come out against this president on any number of issues because they're so terrified of having Elon Musk either fund a primary against them or have Donald Trump support a primary opponent against them, that they're really between a rock and a hard place because they see what's happening to the economy. They know it's going to affect them next November. And yet they don't have the courage to come out and say that this needs to change.
Ashley, how does this affect the ability to get things done in the White House if this is what you're seeing when you start every day?
Look, I think she's exactly right in regards to the White House is in this for the long haul and maybe what's going to happen in September, not what's going to happen over the next couple weeks. But it's a tough argument. I mean, you have various members on the Hill that are concerned and doing town halls like Byron Donalds did, which is why the Republican leadership is telling them not to do that right now, because the thought process is that there's a lot of Democrat plants in the audience that are being funded by outside Democrat organizations. Whether that's right or not, it's yet to be seen. But the problem with the economy being uncertain and the fact that Chairman Powell and the president are fighting over cutting interest rates is actually the big problem right now. The uncertainty and the stability is what actually makes the market positive for investors and especially for everyday Americans like us. So I think that most economists believe that the interest rate should be cut probably at least 50 basis points, whether that's by 25 at a time. Obviously, they will meet again in May to see if that happens, but a public fight just lacks stability, which is why the markets are doing this. But it's concerning, and you don't want to wake up to that message every day.
And Ashley, now you're basically making this point, but the Wall Street Journal's not a Democratic plant in a town hall. So when they see that headline, it's just a historical fact, worst April since the Great Depression. Do you have a sense they have a political grasp, not an economic grasp, but a political grasp on this situation right now?
Absolutely, and I think that they're waiting for the long haul. Again, I mean, we don't have an election really. By next summer, if the markets are not where they need to be, if the economy is not where it needs to be, if everyday prices in regards to gas and groceries are not where they need to be, that's where it's concerned. We do have time. I think they feel they have time, and they're going to ride this out. They feel that the broader policy issues are much more important than this up and down over the next couple weeks.
We'll see if it's just a couple weeks or it goes longer than that. So, Julie, Pete Hegseth, Signal group chat, including his wife and brother, that included some of those very detailed military strike plans, including like, this is when the bombs will drop. that level of specificity. At least that was in the first Signal chat. You now have a Republican Congressman, Don Bacon, who himself has, decorated military service, saying this guy is unserious. To quote Succession there, he goes on to say, if a Democrat did this, we'd be demanding a scalp. I don't like hypocrisy. We should be Americans first when it comes to security.
Well, Don Bacon is in a swing district, and Don Bacon understands his political future rides on making sure that this president brings some sort of stability to our national security and to our economy. And of course, that's why Don Bacon is reacting. The people who should be reacting are people like Joni Ernst, people like Roger Wicker, people like Tom Cotton, people like Deb Fischer, who on her website, I actually looked at her website yesterday, said something along the lines of her number one priority is making sure that our nation is protected and our homeland security is secure. I'm paraphrasing. If that's true, you have a senior member of this administration, not once but twice, putting war plans on a group chat, one of which is on his private phone, which you can be assured that China or Russia or Iran or somebody's already hacked into. They had it. And sending it to his wife, who, I mean, God bless Jen Hegseth, but what qualifications does she have to look at any kind of proprietary military information? And yet they are so terrified that they're putting America's security second to their own political survival. I mean, these are people, every person I mentioned served in the armed forces. They took an oath to the Constitution. They took an oath to defend the United States. And yet they are so concerned about their political future that they don't have the courage to stand up, Roger Wicker as chairman of the Armed Services Committee, and say, you know what, we made a mistake. Pete Hegseth is not a serious man. He was not qualified for this job. Lesson learned. Let's get somebody in there who actually knows how to do the job. But they're not going to do that because the president is standing behind him, and because the president is standing behind him, they're going to stand behind him. It's a complete abdication of their responsibility.
Actually, what to basically Don Bacon's point or question here, what would Republicans be saying if this were a Democratic administration and an official had used his private phone in a Signal group chat sending these detailed war plans?
Well, we watched how the Republicans reacted to this during not the same instance, but because of like Hillary Clinton's laptop. Obviously, each side of the aisle fight about the lack of judgment on both sides. I mean, obviously, this is not something that Pete Hegseth should be having the President of the United States talk about. It was a lack of judgment. It was supposedly sensitive information. The Inspector General of the Department of Defense will tell us if it's more than sensitive information, but at the end of the day, it shouldn't have been on any phone or in any Signal chat. Obviously, this is, hopefully he learned his lesson the first time. This happened the same time, if it happened, the same time as the first Signal chat, so it's not like something that happened a couple weeks later. But more importantly, what he has in his favor right now is the fact that the New York Times is all over this, and the New York Times is the one that's breaking this. I mean, this just makes the president and the White House, right or wrong, dig in even deeper, because they're saying, look, these guys have been after Hegseth since the beginning, and we're not going to move just because of X, Y, and Z. And, he's going to be talking, Hegseth's going to be talking today at 8 a.m. Let's see what he says, but I imagine that he's going to be digging in even deeper.
Here's what he will likely say, because it's what he has been saying. He won't deny any of it. He won't deny that he used a private device to send, these detailed strike plans to his wife and brother. What he'll do is he'll attack those who made that information public. Ashley Davis, Julie Ruzynski, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Appreciate your time. Kate?
So funeral